Here is the report you asked for.
The projections seem overly optimistic. What's the source?
The data is all referenced.
Someone crying. Not just anyone, his boss, the formidable CEO of Horizon Technologies, a woman whose steely composure had earned her the nickname Ice Queen throughout the corporate world. Mark froze, his hand still raised to knock, as the weight of this moment crashed over him. What happened next would change both their lives forever, creating an unexpected bond that neither could have imagined. If you're touched by stories of human connection that transcend professional boundaries, hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing moments that remind us of our shared humanity. Mark shifted uncomfortably in the hallway, the stack of quarterly reports clutched tightly in his hands. It was already 8:30 p.m., and he'd promised his 7-year-old daughter Emma he'd be home to tuck her in. His mother-in-law could only babysit until 9 o'clock, and the traffic across town would take at least 20 minutes. But Victoria had specifically requested these reports before tomorrow's board meeting, and Mark couldn't afford to disappoint, not when he was still paying off his late wife's medical bills and struggling to provide stability for Emma. 3 years into single parenthood, Mark had mastered the art of quiet efficiency at Horizon Technologies. He kept his head down, worked diligently, and never complained about the long hours that Victoria demanded of her executive team. He couldn't risk losing this job with its excellent health insurance and competitive salary, even if it meant missing bedtime stories more often than he'd like. Taking a deep breath, Mark gently pushed the door open. "Ms. Blake? I have those quarterly reports the words died in his throat. Victoria sat behind her massive desk, shoulders hunched, face buried in her hands. Her normally perfect chignon had come undone, dark strands falling around her tear-streaked face. When she looked up, the vulnerability in her eyes was startling. For a brief moment, neither spoke. "I'm so sorry," Mark stammered, already backing toward the door. "I should have knocked louder." "Wait." Her voice was barely audible. "Please, come in and close the door." Mark hesitated, then did as she asked. The tension in the room was palpable as he placed the reports on her desk, unsure where to look or what to say. Victoria straightened her posture, attempting to regain her composure. "I apologize for this." She gestured vaguely at her face, quickly wiping away tears with the back of her hand. "There's nothing to apologize for," Mark said quietly. "We're all human." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Not according to the board. Or the press. Or most of the employees here, I suspect." She reached for a tissue, dabbing at her eyes. "Do you know what they call me behind my back?" Mark shifted his weight uncomfortably. "I don't really listen to office gossip." "The Ice Queen," she said flatly. "Sometimes worse." An awkward silence stretched between them until Victoria spoke again, her voice steadier now. "You have a daughter, don't you, Mark?" Surprised she knew this detail about his life, he nodded. "Emma. She's 7. And you're raising her alone?" "Yes. My wife, Melissa, passed away from ovarian cancer 3 years ago." Victoria's expression softened. "I'm sorry. That must be incredibly difficult." Mark shrugged, uncomfortable with the sudden role reversal, his fearsome boss showing concern for his personal circumstances. "We manage. My mother-in-law helps when she can." Victoria seemed to be studying him, her red-rimmed eyes contemplative. Then she said something that caught him completely off guard. "I need someone to teach me how to connect with my son." Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. "I'm sorry." Victoria sighed, gesturing for him to take a seat. As he slowly lowered himself into the chair across from her desk, she pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of a sullen teenage boy with her same dark eyes. "This is Ethan. He's 15, and I'm losing him." The vulnerability in her voice was startling. His father has always been the fun parent, the one who took him camping and taught him to play baseball. I've been the one making sure college is paid for and keeping this company afloat." Mark nodded, beginning to understand. We had joint custody after the divorce, but David, my ex, moved to Seattle for work last month. Ethan chose to stay with me, and I. Victoria's composure cracked again. I have no idea how to talk to my own son. He locks himself in his room, barely speaks during dinner, and when he does, it's to tell me how I've ruined his life by not letting him move with his dad. The request that followed shocked Mark to his core. I've watched you with Emma at the company picnic, Victoria continued. The way you really listen to her, how you make her feel important. And I've seen how you manage your team, with empathy but firm boundaries. She took a deep breath. Would you help me? I need someone who understands both parenting and professional demands. I need to learn how to be present for Ethan without sacrificing everything I've built here. Mark sat stunned. Victoria Blake, CEO of a Fortune 500 company, was asking him, a mid-level marketing executive, for parenting advice. I can pay you, she added quickly, misinterpreting his silence. Consider it consulting work. No, Mark said firmly, finding his voice. I wouldn't accept payment for something like this. But I'm not sure I'm qualified to help. Emma's only 7, and girls are different from teenage boys. You're the most balanced parent I know who also thrives professionally, Victoria insisted. Everyone else either sacrifices their career for their children or their children for their career. Somehow, you found middle ground. Mark wanted to laugh at the irony. He'd just been agonizing over missing Emma's bedtime again. But before he could correct Victoria's perception, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother-in-law. Emma won't go to sleep until you're home. Please hurry. Victoria noticed the worry crossing his face. You need to go. Mark nodded, standing reluctantly. I promised Emma I'd tuck her in. Then go, Victoria said, surprising him again. The board meeting isn't until 11 a.m. tomorrow. The reports can wait. Mark hesitated at the door. About your request. I'm willing to try helping, but only if we're honest with each other. The balance you think I've found? I struggle with it every day. I'm constantly terrified I'm failing Emma while also worrying I'm not meeting expectations here. Victoria's expression softened with genuine relief. That honesty is exactly why I asked you. On the drive home, Mark couldn't stop thinking about Victoria's request. He'd always seen her as the intimidating figure who strode through the office in designer suits, making difficult decisions without apparent emotion. Learning she struggled with parenthood just as he did humanized her in a way he never expected. When he arrived home, his mother-in-law Margaret greeted him with a knowing look. She's still awake, she said, gathering her purse. Been asking for you every 5 minutes. Mark found Emma sitting up in bed, clutching the worn stuffed rabbit that had been her constant companion since Melissa's death. Daddy, she exclaimed, her face lighting up. You made it. The guilt that had been gnawing at him all evening intensified as he sat on the edge of her bed. I promised I would, didn't I? But sometimes promises get broken because of important work stuff, Emma recited with the wisdom of a child who had already learned to accommodate an adult's unpredictable schedule. Mark's heart clenched. Hey, Bug, I want to talk about that. Sometimes I might be late, but that doesn't mean work is more important than you. You are always, always my priority. Emma tilted her head. Then why do you have to stay late so much? It was the same question he'd been wrestling with himself. Because sometimes adults have responsibilities that are complicated, he tried to explain. I work hard so we can have our home and your school and the things we need. But I'm thinking maybe we need to find a better balance. After reading Emma 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web and watching her drift off to sleep, Mark sat at his kitchen table with a notepad. If he was going to help Victoria connect with her son, he needed to examine his own approach to parenting more critically. The next morning, Mark arrived at work early, clutching a coffee and a notebook filled with ideas. He was surprised to find Victoria already in her office, looking more composed than the night before but still with shadows under her eyes that her carefully applied makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Good morning," she said, gesturing him inside. "I hope Emma got to sleep all right." "She did, thank you." Mark handed her the reports he'd forgotten in his haste the night before. "About your request, I've given it some thought, and I'm willing to help, but I have a condition." Victoria raised an eyebrow, unused to conditions from her employees. "Whatever advice I share with you about connecting with Ethan, you have to allow me to implement the same principles with my own schedule," Mark said firmly. "If I'm going to help you be more present for your son, I need to be more present for my daughter too." For a moment, Victoria said nothing, and Mark feared he'd overstepped. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her usually stern features. "That seems more than fair," she agreed. "In fact, I think we should formalize a new flexible work policy for all employees with caregiving responsibilities. It could start as a pilot program with the executive team." Mark was stunned. "That would be revolutionary for the company culture." "Sometimes revolution is necessary for evolution," Victoria said. "Now, when can we start?" "Ethan has a band concert tomorrow night that I've already committed to attending, and I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing." Thus began an unusual partnership. 3 times a week, Mark and Victoria would meet, sometimes in her office, sometimes over lunch, and occasionally at a quiet coffee shop near the office, to discuss parenting strategies. Mark shared his experience of connecting with Emma through dedicated, no-phone zones, and regular one-on-one activities based on her interests, while Victoria offered insights on maintaining professional boundaries without bringing work stress home. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Victoria texted Mark on a Sunday, "Ethan agreed to go hiking with me. He actually talked about school for 20 minutes. Progress." The changes at work were equally noticeable. Victoria implemented the flexible work policy, allowing parents to adjust their schedules around family commitments as long as their work was completed. Productivity actually improved, and employee satisfaction scores began to climb. For Mark, the ability to leave at 5 p.m. twice a week to attend Emma's swim lessons transformed their relationship. The constant guilt he'd been carrying began to ease as he found a rhythm that allowed him to be both a dedicated employee and an engaged father. But the path wasn't without obstacles. A month into their arrangement, Victoria faced pushback from some board members who questioned whether her softer approach to leadership indicated she was losing her edge. Meanwhile, Mark struggled with colleagues who assumed his new schedule meant he wasn't serious about advancement. The crisis point came when Victoria was preparing for the company's biggest presentation of the year to potential investors. She'd promised Ethan she would attend his band's first major performance, but the investor meeting was scheduled for the same evening. "I don't know what to do," she admitted to Mark during their weekly coffee meeting. "If I miss this investor presentation, the board will see it as confirmation that my priorities have shifted away from the company. But if I miss Ethan's concert after promising I'd be there." Mark considered carefully before responding. "What would you tell another executive facing this same dilemma?" Victoria frowned. "I'd probably tell them the investors come first. That's the reality of leadership." "Is it?" Mark challenged gently. "Or is that just what we've accepted as reality? The investors will still be there next week. Ethan's first major concert happens once. The presentation can't be rescheduled at this point," Victoria sighed. "Too many moving parts." "Then don't reschedule it," Mark suggested. "Delegate it. You have an entire executive team of capable people who could handle this presentation. Including me." Victoria looked startled. "You'd be willing to present to the investors?" "I've been working on the marketing portion anyway," Mark pointed out. "And Jason from finance knows the projections backward and forward. Between the two of us, we could cover everything you would, just with our own approach." After much deliberation, Victoria made her decision. She attended Ethan's concert, sitting in the front row and recording his saxophone solo while Mark and Jason successfully presented to the investors. The board was initially concerned about her absence, but when the investors committed to an even larger investment than anticipated, impressed by what they called the depth of talent within the organization, those concerns quickly faded. That night changed something fundamental in both their lives. Victoria sent Mark a photo of her and Ethan, both smiling, his arm awkwardly but affectionately draped around her shoulder. The caption read, "He said he was proud of me for coming. First hug in over a year." 6 months into their unusual mentorship, the changes were remarkable. Victoria had established weekly traditions with Ethan, Sunday hiking, Thursday night cooking experiments, and while their relationship still had typical mother-teen friction, they were communicating openly for the first time in years. At work, Victoria had become a vocal advocate for workplace flexibility, speaking at industry conferences about how Horizon Technologies had improved both retention and productivity by acknowledging employees' whole lives. Mark had been promoted to Senior Vice President of Marketing, a position that recognized his contributions while maintaining the flexible schedule that allowed him to be present for Emma. His team followed his example of focused, efficient work during office hours that rarely spilled into evenings or weekends. On the anniversary of their first conversation, Victoria invited Mark and Emma to dinner at her home. Emma and Ethan, despite their age difference, bonded immediately over a shared love of science fiction and disapproval of their parents' musical tastes. As the kids debated the merits of different fictional universes in the living room, Victoria handed Mark a glass of wine in the kitchen. "I never properly thanked you," she said quietly. Mark shook his head. "There's nothing to thank me for. This arrangement has benefited me as much as you." "Not just for the parenting advice," Victoria clarified. "For seeing me as a person that night, not just as the CEO. For not judging me when I was vulnerable." "We all need someone who sees us clearly sometimes," Mark replied. "Melissa used to be that person for me. After she died, I thought I had to be strong all the time, never show weakness or uncertainty." "That sounds familiar," Victoria said with a wry smile. "It's exhausting, isn't it?" "Completely." Mark raised his glass in a small toast. "To seeing each other clearly." Victoria clinked her glass against his. "And to the courage to ask for help when we need it." From the living room came the sound of Ethan and Emma laughing together, a simple joy that underscored the profound truth they'd both discovered: strength wasn't found in isolation or in maintaining a perfect facade. True strength came from vulnerability, from connection, and from the courage to balance the different parts of a full and meaningful life. The story of a single dad and his CEO didn't end with a romantic cliché or a perfect resolution to all life's complications. Instead, it continued as a genuine friendship between two people navigating the complex journey of parenthood while pursuing meaningful work. Their willingness to see beyond professional roles had created ripples that transformed not just their lives and their children's lives, but an entire company culture. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin with the simplest human moments, like finding the courage to stay when someone is crying, and the bravery to ask for help when you need it most.